Hello guys, I'm Minja Kim from Willing to Share and welcome back to another video on political philosophy. And in this video will be my last lecture for political philosophy lessons. And it was tough to decide which philosopher I should choose to deal with in my last video. But in today's video, we'll talk about one of the most influential political philosophers of all time, Hannah Arendt. Now let's first look at the chronology of Hannah Arendt. Hannah Arendt was born in a Jewish family in 1906 Germany, and after studying at the University of Berlin for 2 years, she entered the Marburg University in 1926, where she encountered another very famous German philosopher during the era, Martin Heidegger. And during her years at the Marburg University, Heidegger as a professor and Hannah Arendt as a student developed a relationship. But soon after, the relationship broke, and she studied under Jaspers. Karl Jaspers was the one who continued to support Arendt. Now, living in Europe during 1920 to 40 as a Jewish means that one would not be free from the Nazi Germany's repression. And this was the case to Hannah Arendt too. So, she fled to America in 1933 away from the Nazi Germany. And after on, she published many masterpieces like The Origins of Totalitarianism in 1951, The Human Condition in 1958, and the famous Eichmann in Jerusalem in 1965. In her book Eichmann in Jerusalem, she suggested the concept of the banality of evil, which was harshly criticized by the people, especially by the Jewish. But even during this harsh situation, Karl Jaspers still supported Arendt. And after continuing her studies in America and publishing more books, Hannah Arendt died in America in 1975. Now, action is one of the most essential principles that constitutes the human conditions, as Hannah Arendt says, and action is what achieves the highest level of the vita activa. Vita activa is active life in Latin. The concept of vita activa is divided into three smaller categories, which are labor, work, and action. First of all, labor is related directly to the condition of life, which means that labor is done to fulfill the most basic needs for survival. Work is an activity about conducting the world so it could be more fit for humans. In other words, work is done for the worldliness. And finally, an action is related to the principle of polarity and is done in relation to the concepts such as identity and freedom. And activities like politics are included under the category of action. The activities labor, work, and actions are all necessary for human life, as it contributes to our realization of human abilities. But out of the three categories, action is what distinguishes us humans from other animals and from gods. And in the category of action, freedom and polarity are two very important concepts. Freedom is the capacity that makes one able to start something new or do actions that were unexpected. Freedom is given to everyone since born. And we need to note that the concept of freedom in this context that Hannah Arendt talks about is not what the freedom that allows one to choose between the multiple possible choices. And moving on to another very important concept is polarity. In the philosophy of Hannah Arendt, an action cannot be done alone, as an action introduces something new to the world. If one is isolated from others and society, then one would not be able to introduce anything to the world. Therefore, just like the way a musical or a theater will not be complete without an audience, an action requires a plurality of people who have different point of view and can judge the actions itself. Now, moving on to the next important concept of Hannah Arendt's philosophy, we cannot leave out the concept of the banality of evil. Now, how could such a normal human individual commit such inhumane acts? This was the same question Arendt asked herself when she participated in the trial of Eichmann, one of the most major organizers of the Holocaust. Now, what kind of person can possibly order and conduct a massacre of the innocent Jewish? he must be an evil and psychopathic and emotionless person, right? But the person that Arendt saw that day on the trial was very different. In fact, as Arendt describes him, he was neither perverted or nor sadistic, but was rather terrifyingly normal. And to explain how such a normal person could commit such an evil thing, Hannah Arendt brought up the thesis of the banality of evil. And she explained that Eichmann was not evil from the very beginning, but instead, he simply was a man who joined the Nazi Party and committed the actions not because he had an evil intention, but because he just happened to be in that situation. And this is what Arendt tried to say with her banality of evil, that anyone can commit something evil in a certain situation. But this doesn't mean that Arendt did not blame him for doing anything. For his actions, Arendt did blame Eichmann for not thinking of what his actions could bring. Now, the political philosophy lecture has come to an end, and along with the farewell, I would like to give you some more suggestions and tips for those who are interested in philosophy but are stuck on how to start studying it. The first way that I would like to recommend you to do is to study the philosophers in a chronological order. So we start with the most ancient philosophers of Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, just like we did in our political lecture. Then we gradually move on to the Middle Ages, like Thomas Aquinas. Then we move on to the philosophers during the Enlightenment period, like John Locke, Thomas Hobbes, and more. Now, many theories of philosophers were influenced by those from the past. So, studying philosophy in this way, in a chronological order, would very much help you to develop a better understanding on the concepts. And through this method, you will be able to have a general idea on the many categories of philosophy. And for those who have not developed a typical appetite on philosophy, and I highly recommend this method. But there are too many philosophers out there, right? Then are we supposed to look at all of them? The answer is no. We do not have to look at every single person at the very beginning. You can simply begin your journey with the philosophers that you know the name of. And after going through the basic and general plots of philosophy, you guys might have a topic that one would like to learn more about, or a topic that you're especially interested in. If that is the case, then you will go on studying that very category of philosophy. For example, you might be interested in moral philosophy, metaphysics, logic, and more. Or you might have a philosopher that you'd like to know more about. In that case, or probably on cases, try reading the books first. Quite challenging to read and understand those books at once. Then how should we read it? Well, we first just read it. And while reading, make sure to look up the vocabulary and concepts that you do not understand. And also try taking notes, like bullet points that will give you a summary of the ideas in the book. And then, after finishing the book once, try reading other articles and research papers that deals with the concepts of the book. Or YouTube videos that explain such concepts would also be very helpful. And then, with all those knowledges back in your head, you will be able to understand the book much easier. Today, for the philosophy of Hannah Arendt, we looked at her concept on action, the very important vita activa, and her famous banality of evil. We had a long journey all the way from the concepts of the social contracts, utilitarianism, and to the political philosophy of many different philosophers. Thank you for watching, and although the political philosophy lecture ends here, make sure to check out other lectures from We Learn to Share. Bye!